Listen to the skies, listen to the sound. Something on the land, something going down. Down pressers speeding by life. Fever's heart, burning rivers to cross. Walls of Babylon, material noise. Thinking they've touched the moon. Freedom takes a rocket blast. Just another day, like yesterday. Rocking my heart, rocking the reds. Woman like you, times like this. All that's real connects to you. Happy medicine, making me smile. Seeing you laugh, getting so near. Rocking our hearts, rocking the reds. Carrying on like he ain't been gone. Warmaker's back in town. His notion taking care of us. Not same as, not even close to our notion of taking care of us. Nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. Got no job and prices going up. Warmaker's back in town. Just another day, like yesterday. Rocking my heart, rocking the reds. No chance we're gonna ever give up. Together we'll dance our personal dance. Sweet starts, surrendering only to each other. These days holding the night, holding on tight. Rocking our hearts, rocking the reds.
Hello, greetings everyone. Aquaba. We hope that you are well. Hope you are at your highest level of mental, physical, and spiritual capacity. And we are so happy that you are deciding to spend this hour joining us here with our weekly episode of Our Ancestors' Voices, a weekly program sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And our topic today is commemorating Guinea's courageous stand against Portuguese invasion. Very important historical period in the history of Pan-African work. And we commemorate it every November because it was on November 22nd, 1970, when Portugal invaded the country of Guinea. And there are 4 countries in Africa with the word Guinea in them. And we know people don't really know the geography of Africa. People that live in the Western Hemisphere and even people all over the world aren't really that familiar with the geography. So, and it's further complicated by the fact that 2 of the most significant countries in the history of Pan-African work have the term Guinea as a part of their title. So there's Guinea-Conakry, which is the country that we're focusing on for the purpose of today's program. And just to the south of Guinea-Conakry is Guinea-Bissau. And so for Pan-Africanists and people in Africa, that's how we refer to those 2 countries since they border each other, Guinea-Conakry and Guinea-Bissau, because those 2 cities are the capitals of each of those countries. Conakry is the capital of the Guinea to the north, and Bissau is the capital of the Guinea to the south. So we're glad that you can join us for this very important episode. We really would not be here were it not for the courageousness of Guinea and the Democratic Party of Guinea and Sekou Ture. So that's what we're going to talk about. We give honor and respect to the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. And before we started, I was telling Shakur, I was so excited. I got this book in the mail today, Man of Dawn. It's a story about Wabi-Anini, or who was formerly known as Vernon Belcourt. And he was one of the original leaders of the American Indian movement in this country. Of course, his brother, Clyde Belcourt, along with Dennis Banks, were the two people credited with founding the American Indian movement. But Wabi-Anini, the purpose of this book is the FBI initiated this counterintelligence program against liberation movements in this country. And we know, African people know, they did it against organizations like the Black Panther Party, the Nation of Islam, etc. And a lot of the FBI's propaganda is the reason why people walk around here in 2024 talking about the Nation of Islam killed Malcolm X. The Nation of Islam killed Malcolm X. And we always said the Africans may have squeezed the trigger, but it was the capitalist system that bought the bullets. So it was the same situation in the American Indian movement, in that a lot of indigenous people today walk around talking about the American Indian movement in general, and people like Wabi-Anini in particular responsible for assassinating Anime Pictaw Akwash, who we've done programs about. So if you don't know who she is, you should definitely go back and find out. She was one of the key organizers in the American Indian movement in the early 70s here in this country, a woman from Canada. You should know about her. But the purpose of this book is to expose and, disintegrate these rumors that Wabi-Anini had anything to do with Anime Pictaw Akwash being assassinated. And so this book is long overdue. We've been saying this for years. The AAPRP has always worked very closely with the American Indian movement, and Wabi-Anini was one of the most consistent comrades in the American Indian movement, who worked directly with the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. And we lost him in his physical form in 2007. So, there's nothing you have other than your name and your word. And so I'm really excited about this book and the opportunity, written by his daughter in collaboration with Anime Pictaw Akwash's daughters, to squash this dirty rumor about Wabi-Anini that was initiated by our enemies. It's important to always keep that in mind. We didn't initiate it, although a lot of us are so confused and just have rubbish between our ears. We think we did, but we didn't. And of course, we honor our African ancestors. We always do that. And, right before that book, I finished a book on Louise Little, and I've talked about that book, talking about the courage and dignity that she displayed when they took her children from her, including a young Malcolm X, then Malcolm Little, and the other 6 children she had. And she refused to bow down and give them any, when they put her in the insane asylum, said she was insane. I think anybody whose husband was killed or died instantly in the 1940s and then had all of their children taken away would go insane. I think anybody would do that. And they, the system was designed to, it took all her benefits away. The insurance company refused to pay the insurance, even though the policy was more or less up to date. There was one payment that Earl Little had made right before he was killed, and this scum used that as an excuse to claim that he had killed himself. And during those times, if you committed suicide and you had life insurance, the insurance company wasn't obligated to pay out. So the book was about Louise Little and how she, how she had to stand up, and despite all this dignity, despite being institutionalized, and still maintain, a pretty clear and lucid picture of who she was, who her son was once he became well known as Malcolm X, or El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, up until her death in the 70s, right? So the ancestors, the reason why we're here and the reason why we have the spirit that we have. And we're so thankful for them and so thankful that you're joining us today. Okay, so thank you for being here. And we'll get on with our introduction and get started. Our Ancestors' Voices, sponsored by the AAPRP. Okay, and the AAPRP is what you see there, a revolutionary, independent, mass, Pan-African political party based in Africa. We're not members of the Labour Party in Britain or Zionist Israel. We're not members of the Likud party in Zionist Israel. We're not members of the Conservative Party in Britain. We're not members of the Tories or any of these capitalist parties. We're not members of the Democratic or Republican Party in this backward cesspool. We're members of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, an independent party. We're not affiliated with any of these capitalist elections and campaign finance and any of this corruption that masquerades as democratic political practice in this backward country. We're not affiliated with any of that. We are with an independent, revolutionary, Pan-African political party that is based in Africa. We don't recognize the master's colonial borders. We don't parrot the master's teachings that because we're born in the U.S., then we have to siphon ourselves off from the rest of our African family when we know that many of them are our biological relatives. When they stole us from Africa, they separated us based on profit, not based on any level of humanity. So what kind of fool would use their definitions to define who we are as a people? The only people that do that are people who have no knowledge of our history. So we have an international Pan-African political party that operates all over the world and is working to achieve Pan-Africanism. I'm fired up today. We have an all-African women's revolutionary union. And, you know, the women always fire up the work. They always lead the work. They always give the most valuable contributions to the work. That's why I'm so angered by all these social media attacks against African women by a bunch of cowards. And I troll the hell out of them. I'm going to tell you that right now. I troll the hell out of them. All of these weak, cowardly African men that are on social media. And if you're one of them, I'm talking to you and your punk ass, because you wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for African women. Even if you didn't know them, they are the reason why you're here. And so we have this wonderful All-African Women's Revolutionary Union assembly today, and had a representative from the Polisario Front in the Western Sahara in North Africa. I know you don't know what that is, but it's a part of our Pan-African struggle to unite the African continent. And we had representative from North Africa who was designing. We don't say Morocco because they've been fighting for their independence from Morocco. But the point is that it was so inspirational. Yeah, we're fired up today. We should be fired up. You know, we don't watch American football to get fired up. We engage in our struggle for liberation to be inspired. So we're inspired, and Pan-Africanism is in our view, and we will achieve it. And Our Ancestors' Voices is hosted each week by myself, Ajamu, and Shakura, my biological and ideological daughter. So to get us started on our topic today, commemorating Guinea's courageous stand against the Portuguese invasion, I will turn it over to Shakura.
Well, thank you, kind sir. I appreciate you. Greetings, everyone. Hello, hello. Greetings. So we are so excited to talk about the Democratic Party of Guinea today. We specifically want to focus on the relationship between what we abbreviate as the PDG, with their relationship with the All African People's Revolutionary Party. So, in order to talk about this very long-standing relationship, we do need to identify that because of the neo-colonialist coup that overthrew Sekou Ture and the Democratic Party of Guinea, this took place in Guinea in the spring of 1984. So, around the earlier parts of the All African People's Revolutionary Party being established, if you joined work study, you would come to soon realize that you would be exposed very quickly to the relationship between the All African People's Revolutionary Party, Sekou Toure's contributions, and being one of the co-founders of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, of course, along with others that we have mentioned. And then you would also be able to kind of dig a little bit deeper into the Democratic Party's organization, their background, their founding members, and things of that nature. And so being able to make those connections, and we have always been a part of that, and we've always been rooted in being a part of that, because we wanted people in the All African People's Revolutionary Party Work Study Circle to be able to identify how this relationship historically has become blossomed in so many different ways. And really, in understanding the relationship, we'll be talking more about it within the seminar for this time period. But what we want to impose on people who are new to work study or new to the party's ideologies in general, we want to help you all understand that really the biggest way that we have tried to make the connection about our information and how we support the PDG, how the PDG has always supported us and had our back, was really to kind of help spread that information and to enhance the information about just what they were able to do, which was repealing the Portuguese invasion in Guinea-Conakry as of November 22nd, 1970. And it's important to note this because anytime I think we as colonized people realize that we just are further dehumanized, there's more microaggressions that we're dealing with. Excuse me, there's more systems of oppression. There's more reasons for us to have to explain ourselves under white supremacy. There's more reasons for us to feel the imposter syndrome and for us to feel like we are inadequate, we are not enough, we are incapable, for us to feel like we are not worthy, for us to feel like we don't matter, or for us to feel like we shouldn't be working as hard to resist capitalism. Propaganda works overtime to make us feel all those things in addition to trying to break us down. Because if they succeed in breaking us down, then we are less of a threat to them and their operations. We are less of a threat to their functionality and their operations. So they're working twice as hard to break us down. But the thing about it is, whether you join the All African People's Revolutionary Party, and we are helping you to understand how the Democratic Party of Guinea was able to work with the entire military and folks who were able to resist and push the Portuguese out. Anytime we talk about, as colonized people, fighting against the oppressor who was trying to take over. And then we talk about success and we talk about winning, or we talk about even fighting again because the neo-colonizer has returned and tried to take over. I think that that conversation will never, ever, ever get old. This is why we made such a big deal about Cinco de Mayo, because we were trying to help spread information about how our indigenous comrades in Mexico were able to fight off the French and they defeated them. This is why we make such a big deal about the background of Ghana and how they have been able to fight off the British. We have always given examples about areas where they have fought off colonizers, some where multiple colonizers have come and tried to take over. In our work study circle, we're reading a book right now, Women in the Cuban Revolution by Fidel Castro and Vilma Espin. And I'm very humbled to finally get to read about Cuba. It's been so exciting and just so uplifting. And I just have so many emotions of, feeling fired up and feeling, the ways that patriarchy is just crumbling. It just makes me so happy. My liver is smiling. I don't even know how else to describe it. But when I think about all that Cuba has done to help non-male people, because they understand that non-male people are the key to unlocking Cuba's revolutionary socialism success, to me is quite obvious that one would, be able to unlock that. And so in reading more about that, it's been so moving. And it's been so humbling to learn that there are places on this planet where people actually do matter and where the advancement of people's struggles actually matter. And so I guess I'm saying all that to say this is why we have to keep talking about these experiences, because even in reading about the Cuba Revolution and women in the revolutionary struggle, even Cuba was devastated with not one, but two colonizers trying to take over. I believe, if my story is correct, and Comrade Ajamu, I'm sure you'll correct me, I believe first it was the Spaniards, and then even the US tried to colonize Cuba at one point. So my point is, we can't even let our guard down if we're able to fight off one colonizer, because there's always somebody else coming back, because we have resources, because we have land, because we have opportunity, in some cases because we have workers who can be exploited, who can be abducted and taken to a completely different part of the world and completely removed of all of their knowledge, their culture, their beliefs, their values, everything that makes them who they are, by enough beatings and violent explanations to let them know they have no choice but to accept the new agenda that you are pushing. We can do all of that. The villains that are in this world, the inhumane people that are in this world, the people in power, the people that are abusing people every day, whether they're propagandists, whether they're imperialists, whether they're Zionists, whatever, they all can continue to do what they're doing. But one of the best ways that we can resist that is by reminding people that it is possible to resist colonization. It is possible to resist the oppressor. It is possible to resist the struggle. It is possible. And you can use the struggle to help you resist the oppression. So this is why we continue to talk about slave revolts. This is why we continue to talk about Palestinians fighting back. This is why we continue to talk about the Democratic Party of Guinea and how they removed the Portuguese out of their space and said, y'all have got to go. We will continue to talk about it because it bears repeating. If we don't talk about it, we are more likely to be broken down, suscepted, and we are unable to see that we can rise up. We are unable to see that we still have the capabilities of fighting. I talked to a comrade earlier, and we were both talking about how exhausting it is to resist capitalism. If you do it correctly, it's extremely exhausting because it's a nonstop job. You're never off work. You don't get benefits. You don't get paid overtime. You're just constantly, constantly, constantly on edge, to where you probably have physical tenseness in your body, like some of us do, right? Because you're constantly trying to be prepared for the next shoe to drop under the capitalist system. By the same token, though, both the comrade and I are organizers with the All African People's Revolutionary Party. So it bears repeating that we still believe in what we're doing. Even though we're acknowledging the exhaustion that takes place, we also still believe that what we're doing is correct. And we believe that we're going to continue to do it for as long as we have breath in our bodies, because we believe that that's a value we're committed to, and we are committed to our principles. We also understand that this is what gets us out of bed every day. This is what helps us to understand who we are. We are committed because we know who we are, and we're not confused by any means necessary. So yes, we're going to continue to talk about the successes where people were able to fight off colonizers, because those are things we should celebrate. We should keep celebrating. We should bring it up in conversation, and we should be reminded that those genes, those DNAs, those are the people's shoulders we stand on, which means we have it in us to continue the fight. We don't have to give up. Next slide, please. We don't have to think that this is the end. We don't have to accept capitalism. We don't have to accept imperialism, Zionism. We don't have to accept any of it. We just have to have self-efficacy to believe that we can and we will win. We have to have self-efficacy. And once we get self-efficacy, we need group efficacy, because it's not enough for us to just believe in ourselves. We have got to believe in each other. That's the things that we need to work on. That's the New Year's resolution, if you are to make one, that you should consider making. Because capitalism and propaganda will teach you, you just need to make the change by yourself. That is a very toxic ideology, because you are simply not going to be able to do that by one person. It is impossible. You're going up against a world and a system that has had years and decades and centuries of practice in terms of oppressing people. So you're not going to be successful. This is not me hating on you. This is simply stating the facts. Now, if you have a collectivist regime on your side, where you have multiple people who have been impacted, multiple people who are peed off, and multiple people who are ready for a change and ready for revolution, it's going to start to look a lot different. because now you got other people who have skills that you don't have, and you have skills that we don't have, and we're going to be able to take this by storm and do what we need to do. So continuing on with the conversation about the relationship between the Democratic Party of Guinea and the All African People's Revolutionary Party, in the very early days of the establishment of the Democratic Party of Guinea, Sekou Ture had governance in Guinea. The All African People's Revolutionary Party would send delegations to Guinea as what we called the Africa Project, end quote. And at that time, the reason for it was because the work that was done in Guinea was really one of the best ways that we could establish ourselves in terms of our organization on the continent. It was one of the official ways that we could say, well, we are doing this in terms of impacting the outcome of Africa as a whole. And so, again, if you were joining work study for the AAPRP at that time, then we would have helped you to understand, or maybe you still understand to this day, it is continuing to be inspiring when we think about how we started with our Africa project to where we are now, where our relationship with the PDG is now, how it is unstoppable and unbattered by any means necessary. It is stronger and strengthened, and it is more durable than you can even imagine, because the values and the commitments and the principles have remained the same. They have remained the same, that both organizations want what is the very best for African people, period. What is the very best for African people, period. We want what's best for African people, period. And we're willing to do whatever it takes, which is why the work that we do overlines so closely. And this is why we tend to work together. This is why we invite them to speak at our events. This is why we speak at their events. This is why some of our members not only will have party events on the continent, but they will also make sure to go to Guinea-Conakry so that they can volunteer and help with any PDG events as well. And so this is how it starts to grow around the entire continent. And this is why we're continuing to bring this up, so that we can continue to have the conversation. Not to mention, looking at the photo, we see that Sekou Ture visited the US in 1982. And it was during that trip that Ture was able, with the PDG, to really stun much of the DC diplomatic appearances, because they actually spent time in African communities. And there was a major address at Howard University where the AAPRP had Minister Farrakhan introduce Sekou Ture, and that, with the Fruit of Islam, provided security for the PDG delegation. So you want to talk about Pan-Africanism. We have the Nation of Islam and we have the Fruit of Islam working to help protect and represent the Democratic Party of Guinea at a DC event that the party was hosting at Howard University. So this is where, we really start to pull these things together. And as I mentioned, the party invited the Fruit of Islam to come and speak, but we also knew that Sekou Ture was going to be there. And what better way than to bring all these organizations together to continue to address the fact that we all have a collective vision for African people. Some of us may choose to go about getting to that vision a different way, and that's where our values slightly differ a bit. But at the end of the day, most of the organizations that we have talked about, or at least the ones we've talked about tonight, have always had a socialist frame in mind. Even if they don't define socialism the same way that we do, we are humanists, we are egalitarianists, we are collectivists. We just want to make sure that you have the very best interests of colonized people, poor people at heart, that you have the best interests of marginalized genders at heart, differently abled, queer identifying. As long as you are interested in helping the needs of those who are silenced, who are ignored, who are dehumanized, who are colonized, then we can work with you. And everything else can be figured out along the way. So this is where we start to really kind of understand that. And we continue to praise our comrades for all the work that they continue to do with the Democratic Party of Guinea. And again, we would encourage you to do some research in organizations that you're interested in, especially because this year is wrapping up and we are challenging you all. If you are not interested in joining an organization that is working for justice, please, please, please at least consider supporting one. Thank you.
Ashe, obrigada, Asante Sana. Thank you for that, Shakura. And we're just going to continue on. And well, let's get into the focus of the topic today. Why did Portugal attack Guinea on November 22nd of 1970? And as Shakur alluded to, Guinea and the PDG came to power in Guinea in 1958. They had a clear focus on using that Guinean struggle to advance all of Africa, and even the way Guinea gained its independence was a reflection of that. At that time, the French Union, as well as all of the other colonial European countries, seeing the writing on the wall, knew that they had to begin to figure out how independence was going to happen in Africa in ways that would not leave them in a position where they didn't have some sort of ability to continue to exploit Africa's rich mineral resources and cheap labor, right? So this was France's position. And so they were pushing for all of the French colonies at the time to be welcomed into the French Union, not as colonies, but as countries, right? That was the line that they fed us at that time. And Guinea was the only former French colony that rejected that. Senegal, Mali, the Cameroons, all of the other countries that are Burkina Faso that were colonized by the French agreed to stay a part of the French Union in some capacity. And Guinea said, as Sekou Ture said, we prefer freedom in poverty to slavery and riches. And they embarked upon that path, and by doing that, they enacted the anger, the complete anger and inhumanity, and just the primitiveness of the French colonial system. And France did everything it could to cripple Guinea and make it so that it would be virtually impossible for Guinea to govern from that point forward of October of 1958. So that set the stage for Guinea's relationship with the colonial world. And, like we said, Guinea had seen its role as that of being a staging area for anti-colonial liberation movements in Africa. And they demonstrated this by inviting the African Party for the Independence of Guinea-Bissau, or the PAIGC in Guinea-Bissau, which I explained already is the country just south of Guinea-Conakry. And the PAIGC was founded by, of course, Amilcar Cabral, and their desire was to run Portuguese colonialism out of Guinea-Bissau. And the picture at the top, you see Amilcar Cabral to the left and Sekou Ture to the right, and militants from the PDG and the PAIGC coming together to launch and support the PAIGC's efforts to launch its anti-colonial war against Portugal. And starting in 1962, that's what the PAIGC did from Guinea-Conakry. And this, of course, further infuriated the Portuguese and the entire colonial world. And they worked overtime to figure out how they could sabotage the Democratic Party of Guinea and Sekou Ture. And of course, the PDG exacerbated that anger from the colonists against them. We've talked a lot in the past, and we'll continue to talk about how it was the PDG and Sekou Ture who invited the delegation from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee to Guinea in 1964. But before that, the first time the PDG sent a delegation to this country in 1959, just months after Guinea gained its independence, the Guinean delegation came here, and they didn't want to go through all the BS rigmarole diplomatic stuff that the US government wanted to take them through. Because again, the US, like Europe, they were on this track where they were trying to figure out how can we continue to how can we continue to exploit these slaves, but while making them think that we see them as our equals. So they offer these small aid packages, which they did to every African country that was gaining its independence at that time, the late 50s and the early 60s. They offered these small aid packages, and this allowed them to continue to weasel their way and maintain their exploitative relationships in these African territories. And so when the Guinean delegation led by Sekou Ture came to the US, Washington, D.C. in 1959, they wanted to have all these meetings where they sat with the PDG delegation and tried to sell them on these aid packages. And the PDG and Sekou Ture were having none of it. And they told the US diplomats, what we want to do is we want to tour the southern US and we want to see how our people are being treated down there. Of course, you know, this was during the period of full-blown racist Jim Crow segregation laws in this backward country. And so this was, I mean, if you can imagine, in 1959, this was a monumental assertion by the PDG and Sekou Ture. It was national news in this backward country at this time. Who are these upstart slaves that just gained their independence in Guinea, one of the poorest countries in the world, talking about they want to go through the South and assess how African people in this country are being treated? How dare they think that they have a right to talk to us? We're the most democratic country on earth. And so this was the waves that shocked the world as a result of Sekou Ture and the PDG. And it further placed them in the crosshairs of imperialism. That's what's important for us to realize. But not only that, but the PDG wasn't finished. Along with allowing the PAIGC to have their staging area in Guinea-Conakry to launch their war to run Portugal the hell out of Guinea-Bissau, along with supporting the African struggle here in the US. And as I mentioned, sponsoring, you see the Ebony magazine book cover there that had Sekou Ture on it, and talking about, it says there, African leader visits the South. That cover was from 1960. That was the result of that. If you have a screen, I hope you have a screen so you can see this history in front of you, because a lot of us are really confused. You know, these people come on social media today, well, Africa never did anything for us. And some of you are so goddamn stupid, you believe that because you don't know anything about our history. So turn your damn screen on so you can see this living history being presented to you and stop all that nonsense. Africa never did. Africa is the reason why you're here today. Do you think that if there was no Africa, these people, these backward, savage people in this country wouldn't have wiped out the few of us that live here by now? We are the safety valve for Africa. If there were not 50 million Africans here in this backward country, do you think that U.S. policy against Africa wouldn't be even more aggressive and more violent if they didn't have to worry about 50 million Africans, even if the 50 million of us, even if 60% of us are as confused as hell about our identity as African people, they still know we still have the potential to wake up. So we are the safety valve in a way for Africa, and Africa has certainly been the major safety valve for us. So these are just some of the reasons, you all, why the Democratic Party of Guinea and Sekou Ture came into the crosshairs of imperialism. And Portugal, having, you know, at that time, what imperialism considered a legitimate gripe to attack Guinea, because Guinea was providing support for the guerrilla forces that were battling Portuguese control of Guinea-Bissau. All of imperialism lined up behind Portugal in their November 1970 military attack against the people of Guinea. And this operation was called Operation Green Sea, the November 22nd, 1970 assault by Portugal into Guinea. And the picture, I want to just bring your attention to it. It's a picture of the effort to create an African Union in 1960 in Africa, a Pan-African Union. And there you see Mobito Keita, the president of Mali at that time, before imperialism overthrew his government. You see Kwame Nkrumah, then the president of Ghana, before imperialism overthrew his government. And you see Sekou Ture, who is the president of Guinea, and the three countries agreed to have a union. Now, of course, as I mentioned, imperialism overthrew the government in Mali and Ghana. Sekou Ture and the PDG stayed in power 26 years until Sekou Toure's mysterious death here in Cleveland, Ohio, here in this backward cesspool country in March 26th of 1984. But I just want to mention that before we go further, just to talk about the PDG in power for 26 years, because imperialism works overnight. And they have spent so much time since 1958 attempting to discredit the PDG and Sekou Toure. And the way they've done that is they've written and talked extensively about repression in Guinea and accusing the PDG and Sekou Toure of silencing dissident voices. And, I'll be the first to say that in Africa and in the African liberation movement, we have a lot of room for progress as it relates to understanding how to allow space for dissent. We have a long way to go so that we don't immediately see disagreement as antagonistic. This is a struggle that we're waging, but we have the right to wage that struggle, and we are waging it, and we will wage it. But that does not justify the characterization of the Democratic Party of Guinea and Sekou Toure as some sort of dictatorial terrorist regime, as imperialism wants us to believe. And the easy way that I can demonstrate that is I need someone to explain to me how imperialism, we just demonstrated quickly, and we'll demonstrate some more, was completely opposed to the PDG government in Guinea and to Sekou Toure. They wanted him dead. They wanted the PDG out of power. The PDG stayed in power 26 years. There is no way that any African country or any country anywhere in the colonized world could maintain governance in a country for 26 years without there being a high level of popular support for that government among the people that live in that country. Because if there was any level of dissidence against that government, then the CIA and Mossad and all of these imperialist intelligence agencies would have pounced on that and used that as a way to overthrow the Democratic Party of Guinea within the first few months that they were in power in Guinea. So the fact that they remained in power so long, and the only way that they were able to change that was by the death of Sekou Toure, who was still widely supported in Guinea, that does so much to refute this concept that, they used Camp Boreal, which was a torture camp. That's not disputed. A torture camp in Guinea for opponents to the PDG. And yes, without question, I'm sure there was some mismanagement there. There were some people there that shouldn't have been taken there. But imperialism tries to paint the PDG as the foremost practitioners of Camp Boreal. And the regime that imperialism supported after the death of Sekou Toure and the coup d'etat that removed the PDG from power in Guinea, Lassana Conté, the neo-colonial regime that stayed in power from 1984 until just a few short years ago, that regime murdered triple the amount of people at Camp Boreal, but no one ever talks about that because that was in the interest of imperialism. And so, these are just interesting things to consider when they're trying to discredit Sekou Toure and the Democratic Party of Guinea. And again, talking about Operation Green Sea, imperialism used Portugal. Portugal was the surrogate here to attack Guinea because, as I mentioned, Guinea's support for the PAIGC's anti-colonial war against Portugal and Guinea-Bissau. And CIA documents also demonstrate that all the major imperialist powers like France, the US, they also wanted Guinea attacked in November of 1970 because of Sekou Toure and the PDG's efforts to continue the political legacy of Kwame Nkrumah. And this happened after the February 24th, 1966 CIA-inspired coup d'etat that overthrew Kwame Nkrumah's government in Ghana. And we say CIA-inspired because the main propaganda mechanism that was used to discredit Nkrumah in Ghana was the lie that he was stealing all of Ghana's financial treasury resources and putting them in Swiss bank accounts. And the history has proven that Nkrumah stole no money from Ghana's treasury bank accounts. Whatever money he spent was designed to support Patrice Lumumba and the national Congolese movement in the struggle in the Congo, where imperialism murdered Patrice Lumumba. It was designed to support the development of African unity through, at that time, the creation of the Organization of African Unity. Even though we know now that was not the vehicle that would bring unity to Africa, the people that were engaged in that effort were sincerely seeing that as a mechanism that could do that. And all throughout the battle between Nigeria and Biafra, all of these battles in Africa, Nkrumah was in the forefront of using whatever resources that Ghana had available to help to bring about peace throughout Africa, because Nkrumah understood that Ghana was nothing without all of Africa being free and independent and socialist and socialist. So this inspired Guinea to bring Nkrumah to Guinea after he was overthrown in Ghana. And if you've watched our programs, you know that Sekou Ture invited Kwame Nkrumah to become president of Guinea. And Nkrumah just politely declined and said he couldn't be president because the people voted for Sekou Ture. And so Sekou Ture, undeterred, said, well, that's fine, we'll make you co-president. So Nkrumah became, in 1966, co-president of Guinea-Conakry, where he remained as such until his death on April 27th, 1972, in Guinea-Conakry. Very mysterious death. The deaths of Sekou Ture and Kwame Nkrumah, very mysterious. They're not officially listed as assassinations, but I would argue that Kwame Nkrumah was a health nut. He ate healthy. He jogged and exercised in Ville-Sili in Guinea-Conakry every day. He exercised. He was in great health. And his health all of a sudden deteriorated quickly. And before you knew it, he was gone and he was dead. And you could just say, well, you know, he had cancer and that's what cancer does. Yeah, but I think it's also interesting to note that from the time Nkrumah arrived in Guinea, because there were so many efforts to overthrow the PDG, there were so many efforts to assassinate Nkrumah and Sekou Ture in Guinea, that Nkrumah had his same chef that he trusted, that he had in Ghana, who left with him from Ghana to go to Guinea. And the chef mysteriously died under mysterious circumstances in late 1970, early 1971. And the cook that was assigned to Nkrumah from Guinea was not as well known. Was just someone who could perform the task, and resources were limited. But once this individual started cooking for Nkrumah, his health deteriorated quickly. And that, to me, is something that's worth us as Pan-Africanists looking into, that, you know, just so we can get the history correct. But what's important here is that, no question, imperialism wanted to assassinate Sekou Ture, to eliminate his support for African liberation movements, and Kwame Nkrumah for the same. Because think about it, what gift the PDG in Guinea gave us? They gave Kwame Nkrumah a place to write what I would argue were two of his most important books, Class Struggle in Africa and the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. He wrote a number of important books, but those two certainly are at the top in terms of importance. And he did that while he was in Guinea. And it was in Guinea where he wrote the handbook in 1968, and he called for the creation of an all-African People's Revolutionary Party. And Amilcar Cabral, Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Ture, Kwame Ture, who at that time was Stokely Carmichael, active in the Black Power movement here in this backward cesspool, they formed the first work-study circle. And Lamine Janga, who was a youth from Gambia, the first work-study circle for the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. And there might have been others, but we know those folks were in it, in Guinea-Conakry in 1968. And from that point, Stokely Carmichael eventually changed his name to Kwame Ture in 1977 to give respect to Kwame Nkrumah and Sekou Ture. And Kwame Ture joined the Democratic Party of Guinea. He was already a Central Committee member for the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. Kwame Ture remained in Guinea-Conakry for the remaining 30 years of his life and served as a Central Committee member at the time of his death in November of 1998 as a Central Committee member for the Democratic Party of Guinea and a Central Committee member for the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. And it was from that foundation, we made delegations to Guinea, that our work began to spread throughout the African continent. And we began to do work in Guinea-Bissau with the African Party for the Independence of Guinea-Bissau. And now, fast forwarding today, we have scores of AAPRP militants in Guinea-Bissau who are also members of the PAIGC. We have people who are on the Central Committee of the PAIGC and the AAPRP. We have AAPRP cadre like myself who are also official members of the PAIGC. This is the Pan-African work that Kwame Nkrumah visualized when he wrote the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. I'm just a poor ghetto child from San Francisco, California, and I am a cadre organizer in the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, and I am a full member of the African Party for the Independence of Guinea-Bissau. This is incredible to me, not because of me, the individual, but because of the advancement and the opportunities of our Pan-African work. This is just a wonderful thing. And this is why they wanted the PDG and Sekou Ture eliminated. And as I mentioned, we believe that Nkrumah's fast and mysterious death of April 1972 wasn't just from prostate cancer. And we also believe that Sekou Toure's mysterious death in 1984 from an alleged heart attack is highly questionable, as well as Kwame Ture's so-called death from prostate cancer in 1998. We think that imperialism, in the 60s, their primary form of sabotage against genuine Pan-Africanist revolutionaries was assassinations and or coups d'etats. And they carried that out. They carried that out against Patrice Lumumba, against Sukarno in Indonesia, against Keita in Mali, against Nkrumah in Ghana. They carried that out and they made that happen. But as time grew by, there's no reason for us to believe that their tactics didn't shift a little bit, and they began to, we know it's been exposed that they tried to kill Fidel Castro in Cuba numerous times, through the same methods that mysteriously the ailments that ended up ending the lives of Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Ture, and Kwame Ture. So we don't believe in anything that imperialism says. So we have no reason to doubt that they had a hand in the death of these African revolutionaries. Amilcar Cabral assassinated as well. This is the nature of the beast that we're fighting. But the PDG's efforts to make a contribution towards the Pan-African work in the world, unquestioned, you all. I mean, imagine, as backward as our thinking is today, you take a woman like Miss Fannie Lou Hamer, who was a sharecropper in rural Mississippi and didn't even finish the 3rd grade. And this woman was fearless. She was determined to register to vote because at that time she saw that as a vehicle to gain some level of independence and forward progress for our people. And she went on the delegation trip to Guinea-Conakry in 1964. And she came back and there are YouTube videos where she's talking about the experience and how it changed her life, how she saw African people standing upright with dignity, governing an entire country and thumbing their noses at imperialism. She said that. Those aren't my words. She said that she saw that for the first time in her life, a Mississippi woman. And she talked about how she sat at the table with Sekou Ture, sitting just feet from her. This is a woman that couldn't even drink out of a filthy water fountain in Mississippi, who was invited to a country in Africa and sat at the table with the head of state and was treated with dignity and respect. This is the type of impact that you cannot erase by years of confusion, years of clowns and buffoons on social media. You cannot erase our understanding of who the hell we are based on this type of strong history that we're talking about right here. And why is any of this important in 2024 and beyond? And that the reason for that, you all, is because the revolutionary and courageous example of the PDG, what we've talked about for the last hour, that should be enough to inspire African revolutionaries everywhere today. If that doesn't inspire you out, you don't have the capacity to be inspired. It's just that simple. I mean, you should be heavily inspired. I am intrinsically inspired by that. And the example of the PDG in standing up to Portugal and running them the hell out of Guinea-Conakry in 1970, and the PDG's commitment to Pan-Africanism is very similar to what Cuba did in their 1961 stand against the US government and Playa del Get On, what they call the Bay of Pigs, what imperialism calls that. And Guinea's Pan-African work alone quiets all these ignorant ravings that no African country never done anything for Black people in the US. You haven't done anything for yourself because you don't even have enough sense to pick up a book and read about your people and your history. Read about African history. We say it once and we say it a million times. We have never met one of these coons running around here talking about they ain't African and that they've been in America for thousands of years and they're American and they support Trump or they support whoever the hell they support. We have never heard one of these fools that talks like that who has read a single sentence about African history. They haven't read a single book about it. They know nothing about African history. That's, as soon as I hear them talking, I know they don't know anything about it. That's why when people talk to me like that, and I get a lot of them, when people talk to me like that, the first question I ask them, they're going on and on. We ain't no Africans. I ask them, what organization are you in? What organization you say you're a part of again? I already know they don't have one. Because nobody that's engaged in organizing work could talk that ignorantly. Because the work that you're engaged in would show you immediately that those beliefs are irrelevant and untrue. The only people who believe that are people that sit in their house, dark house, because the electricity probably comes in and out, no food in the refrigerator, you're mad because you're a miserable life. You got to get up and go to that ridiculous job that you go to, and you work so hard and you get treated so terribly, and you don't have any money even after going through all that. So you're just mad about that. So here you come to get on your phone because that's the only place you have to escape this miserable existence that you're participating in. And you see somebody say, I'm proud to be African. The only thing you can think to do is to attack that because you think that gives you power because you don't see Africa or African identity as having any power. I mean, this is what we are faced with today. And we are not rejecting you if that's you. We are saying that we're going to embrace you because we know you haven't read anything about Africa. We know that. So we're going to embrace you and we're going to help you understand that the PDG and Sekou Ture are you. And the minute you come to understand that is the minute that freedom and forward progress is rightfully within our sights. And we want to just thank you all for joining us today, coming here for this week. We want to invite you back next week, Sunday, December 1st. Our topic is going to be Pan-Africanism and saving our planet, Pan-Africanism and environmental justice. We're talking about environmental activism in Africa and the African world and how that's so important to our struggle for justice and forward liberation. And we want to invite you to click on the QR code in the upper left-hand corner. If you do that, the red one, you will find access to all the AAPRP programs that are broadcast online. This is just one of them. There are many of them. So go ahead and check that out and find out those programs. And then you also can go to the Forward Ever Shop. You know, I'm hearing it again. I'm so sick of hearing this. You know, every year around this time, well, we should support Black business. These businesses, 99.9% of them are doing nothing to advance our people. Nothing, nothing, nothing. I don't know why so many of you have convinced yourself that these people who do the same thing with their money that the multinational capitalist corporations do with theirs, they just do it on a much smaller scale. I don't know why so many of you think that that's some sort of major accomplishment to spend money with these people. I mean, spend money with African organizations fighting for our liberation. That's where we are. So go to the Forward Ever Shop in that QR code and buy clothing. You got to do it anyway. You know you're going to give all these presents, spend money you don't have for capitalism. So at least buy something that advances a message of African unity. Go to the Forward Ever Shop and buy clothing that does that. Go to Hood Communist. It's a revolutionary African blog. Support that, right? Join the All African People's Revolutionary Party. You can do that by going to aaprp-intl.org. There's a short video. You will be connected with the organizer closest to wherever you identify you are, wherever you are on the planet Earth, and we will get to work organizing to build our Pan-African capacity. You should donate to the AAPRP at Venmo at A-AAPRP or PayPal at AAPRP. Donate to the party. That money goes to our work all throughout the African continent. That's where it goes. We talked today in the Union Assembly. We're sending some of our All African Women's Revolutionary Union comrades, a couple from West Africa, one from here in the U.S., who are part of our AWRU and APRP. We're sending them on a delegation trip to the Western Sahara to participate, Algeria, where there's a conference to talk about the issues in North Africa. And we will be participating in that. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. We have so much work we have to do. So your donations help us do that. And bottom right, you can support Burkina Books, which is one of our projects on the ground in Burkina Faso to bring revolutionary literature. So you can support, you can become a sponsor for so much each month, whatever month you can afford. You should do that. Support Black business. No, support revolutionary African organization, okay, that's doing something concretely to help our people and not just buying somebody a Tesla and a charging port in their garage and doing nothing for the masses of people. And buy my book, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. It's unfortunately only available on Amazon, but all proceeds from the sale of my book go towards buying materials for our anti-fascist work. You know these fascists are coming. They're emboldened, they're thumping their chests. Well, we're going to be ready for them. Thank you for joining us today. Y'all have a great rest of your day. Forward ever, backwards never.